I just want to say while you're here, feel free to say your name in the chat, how you're doing. And throughout this, we are going to be making a playlist of everyone's favorite de-stressing songs. So if anybody wants to put their favorite song in the chat, I would really appreciate that. Great. All right, we'll be getting started soon.
Before we actually start, I just want to say all of these answers are so bomb, and you'll be getting the playlist after this panel itself, in email by us. So don't worry, you're gonna have all these songs in an amazing playlist. So we'll get started super soon. We're just waiting for some more people to roll in, and yeah. Okay, everyone, I think we're gonna start. So hello, and welcome to Loving Yourself as an Act of Resistance, a panel hosted by us, Fridays for Future Toronto, also partnered with Fridays for Future U of T. Today, we're gonna be exploring topics related to and including mental health, eco-anxiety, self-care, and loving oneself as an act of resistance amidst these trying times and global crises. We're so excited to have you all here to discuss these topics together in a safe, comfortable, and open way. And we're just really excited for the great lineup of panelists that you're going to be hearing from today and all the cool speakers and amazing topics. So I want to introduce who we are and our amazing MCs for tonight. So me, I'm Gabby Elhef. I use she, they pronouns. We have Megan Bro. She also uses she, her pronouns. Give a little wave. We have Aishwarya Fatur, and she also uses she, her pronouns. And we're just so excited to share this time with you. We're all youth activists within Fridays for Future Toronto and other Fridays for Future chapters around the world. And we're so excited for this panel. And we'd like to briefly talk about what we are at Fridays for Future Toronto before we get started, in case you're a bit like unfamiliar. So our mission is to create a safe space for youth to advocate for a better world and for a future that recognizes and implements Indigenous rights, uplifts marginalized voices and communities, and follows the principles of climate justice. You can find us on Instagram, which is maybe where you signed up for this panel, Fridays for Future TO, and you can email us at fridaysforfutureto@gmail.com. And please ask questions and add comments in the little Q&A box. The chat is going to be used for just any positive comments you have. Try to keep it like PG-13. Yeah, so in the Q&A box, you're more than welcome to ask any questions when we talk about certain topics or to our panelists later. And we're just super excited. So I'm going to pass it on to Aishwarya.
Amazing. Thank you, Gabby, for that lovely intro. So first and foremost, we'd like to say our land acknowledgement. Obviously, it's very important. Now, we know everyone is residing on different lands, but the one read today is for those who are settlers on the Toronto land. Okay, so start our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are encroaching on the traditional territory of many Indigenous nations, including the Wendat peoples, the Mississauga peoples, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Ojibwe. This land is also now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and the Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the William Treaties, whose land you are on. Now visit the link that we just sent in the chat for an interactive maps of Indigenous territories across Turtle Island. Now, it's important to understand the long-standing history that has brought you to reside on the land and to seek to understand your place within that history. Land acknowledgements do not exist in past tense or historical context. Colonialism is a current ongoing process, as we have seen today. We're like literally seeing it, and we need to build our mindfulness of our present participation. It's important to note that there has been a continuous genocide of Indigenous peoples since the first colonizer had set foot on their traditional land. They have been forcefully removed from their own land, an action which unfortunately continues to happen to this day, as seen in recent issues around pipelines being built across Canada. It is also important to acknowledge the rightful owners of this land, but it is even more important to take concrete action to empower Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island. There are innumerable organizations that are doing just that. And one such organization is the Kani-Kanichki, based in Winnipeg. And this organization organizes community-oriented initiatives and programs rooted in Indigenous culture aimed at advancing Indigenous self-determination, reconciliation, and community well-being. Their website is, we'll link it right in the chat right now, and if you want to donate or get involved. Now, we'd love if all of you could state the territories that you are on in the chat right now to acknowledge that you are also on Indigenous land. Thank you so much.
That's my part. Okay. First, I'm just going to do a quick rundown of what this webinar will look like, just so you can get excited. So our first portion, we're going to be talking about topics like eco-anxiety, meditation, and visualization, and how it is beneficial. We really want this webinar to be a safe space to share some struggles we all face, especially within activism, and speak about some strategies that may work for you. And about halfway through, we will introduce our amazing panelists, Medic, Sidney Moore, and Keerat, for a Q&A session. You can leave your questions in the Q&A section of Zoom, like we said. And if you want, you can also introduce where you're from and your name on the question, just so we can introduce you if we end up choosing to read your question out loud. And we will finish off this webinar by making personal goals and commitments on how we can show up for ourselves while showing up for others, so that we can apply what we learned today. I hope you are as excited as I am. So get comfy and let's get started. Our first topic we are going to discuss tonight is eco-anxiety, something which everyone has felt, whether or not you are actively organizing in the climate justice movement, and something that a lot of us are probably experiencing right now. I'd like to give a warm virtual welcome to our first speaker of the night, Lisa Fireman, a youth activist, also a member of Fridays for Future Toronto, who is going to be discussing this topic tonight.
Hey everybody. All right, so I'm gonna be starting us off with some polls. You can click on the polls, they're great. So first I'm gonna be asking, do you guys ever feel helpless about climate change a little bit? So I know I do, just personally speaking. Can I release the answers to the poll? Is that a thing I can do? Let's see, yeah? Yeah, so most of you do. Only, I'm guessing one person doesn't, but most of you do. And do you find yourself worrying about the ramifications and worrying about how it interferes with your daily life? Like, I know personally, I sometimes get nervous when like I'll do something which isn't sustainable, even though it is what it is. And can I see the results again? Is that a thing? Yeah. Oh, once again. So if you answered yes to any of those two questions, you probably are dealing with eco-anxiety. But what is eco-anxiety? So to everyone here, feel free to drop in the chat what eco-anxiety means to you. I'll read out any that I think are particularly interesting or cool, and then I'll go on with my definition. Let's see. Any? All right, I'll give you guys a second. I feel like I really echo Gabby with so much climate distress and existential dread. Yeah, I got that one too. I feel that. Those are major. So in a nutshell, eco-anxiety is a chronic or severe anxiety with regards to humans' relationships with the environment. It's a form of anxiety induced by the current and future state of our environment and human-induced climate change. This can include a fear of natural disasters and other destructive consequences of pollution. Despite not being listed in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, eco-anxiety is very real. According to a 2018 survey, almost 70% of people in the United States are worried about climate change, and 51% of people feel helpless. Climate change can affect mental health adversely in many ways, including trauma, shock, PTSD, anxiety, depression, substance abuse, aggression, reduced feelings of autonomy, control, feelings of hopelessness, fatalism, or fear, all of which are not good at all. So there are many causes of eco-anxiety. A big contributor to eco-anxiety is experiencing or watching a loved one experience climate-related extreme weather events, such as hurricanes, heat waves, droughts, and wildfires. I know that we don't have hurricanes and whatever in Toronto where most of us are, but I know lots of us have family or even just read on the news about things which are greatly affected by climate change. So whatever the cause is, eco-anxiety is not your fault at all. You didn't ask for climate change. You didn't ask for government inaction. You did not ask for corporations to profit off of emissions. There are steps you can take to live a more eco-friendly lifestyle, but the ability to take those steps is a privilege. Corporations would like you to believe that solving climate change is an individual effort and that you yourself are not doing enough. This is A, false, and B, very anxiety-inducing. All of that messaging does is get corporations off the hook and ruin your mental health. An example of this is, I forget which company it was, but there was one gas company recently which tweeted out being like, what can you do to reduce your emissions, when they were actively like drilling oil? Bold moves on their part. So on the flip side, feeling like your actions have zero impact can be detrimental to your mental health. Rest assured, they do. Humans follow what others are doing. It takes one person to take a stand, and suddenly there's a chain reaction of effort from everyone. Like those who organized this today, and now there's supposed to be 50 people registered to watch this. That's incredible. So, like most mental health disorders, eco-anxiety does not affect everyone equally. People who live in parts of the world that are more susceptible to climate change-induced disasters may feel eco-anxiety more intensely because the efforts of environmental destruction hit closer to home. For similar reasons, people whose livelihoods depend on the environment may be more prone to eco-anxiety. Indigenous peoples are also at serious risk of eco-anxiety. According to Medical News Today, people who live in Indigenous communities often rely on natural resources and tend to reside in more vulnerable geographic areas. The fear of losing their housing, their livelihood, and their cultural heritage, which can be damaging for the sense of identity, belonging, and sense of community. A good example of this is the Inuit. Children and young adults are most vulnerable groups regarding eco-anxiety, and that's us. So we have a lot to worry about in that sense. So I'm willing to bet that the vast majority of the people on this call have eco-anxiety in one way or another, and the polls prove that. So it's very real and very common. Luckily, there are more than a few ways to treat eco-anxiety, and they're all extremely helpful. So here's a few. Taking action is a great method. Although combating climate change is a collective effort involving drastic societal change, there are many positive steps you can take to alleviate the feeling of powerlessness, while at the same time contributing to the environmental cause. Helping others has incredible psychological benefits. Such actions include talking to others about good practices, advocating governments and corporations to adopt environmental policy, making green choices, and basically doing more of what you all are doing now. So although activism is a great way to feel as if the issue's in your control, many don't feel comfortable getting involved in large groups of crowds and protests. Being overwhelmed in those situations is valid and fair. I get overwhelmed all the time. And there are lots of ways to get involved in climate justice work without going out to the streets, such as helping research, social media posts, and spreading the word to friends. Much of eco-anxiety can stem from a fear of the unknown. Therefore, many people find relief in educating themselves through concrete, reliable sources and the issues at hand. Like, I know I sometimes look up good news, like I'll be like, which animals are no longer endangered? And it just really takes a weight off my shoulders for the day. Without discounting the severity of the climate crisis, it's important for our mental health to remain optimistic that we can beat climate change. That's why we do what we do after all. Going outdoors fosters a crucial positive connection with nature. As well, keeping an object from nature, like a rock or like a stick or whatever, is good because you can look at it when you feel disconnected or overwhelmed. This works in a similar way to grounding techniques used to manage traditional anxiety. Another way to connect with nature is to exercise. Physical activity and exercise reduces most types of anxiety. As well, walking, running, cycling, or using carbon emitting translate to decrease our individual footprints, which helps us all alleviate the feeling of powerlessness that we mentioned earlier. And don't be afraid to take a break. It's okay. If worrying about climate change is getting overwhelming, take a day off, listen to some music, meditate. You do you. Your mental health is paramount, and the fight will be collectively stronger if we all stay mentally healthy. It's completely okay to be an imperfect environmentalist. As much as the world would benefit from every single person being a completely sustainable being, it can be challenging for financial, personal, or social reasons. Just one small anecdote that I'd like to mention is that I briefly tried to go vegan to feel as if I was more in control of my footprint. Sadly, due to being like a little bit iron deficient and just not being able to live without Parmesan, it didn't work out. And I feel no shame in being able to say, I tried my best with the right intentions, and as much as me trying to cut that down in my hands is great, the crisis is in the hands of corporations and governments, and I shouldn't beat myself up for this. Believing in your own resiliency is crucial to actually being self-resilient. To boost self-resiliency, there are many steps, including fostering caring and trusting relationships that provide support and encouragement, believing the solvability of environmental problems, and working strategically to solve them, practicing good self-care and positive self-image, keeping personal connections with places and cultural ties when possible, avoiding isolation, like when it isn't COVID, and associating yourself with like-minded people. Like everyone on this call, we're all like-minded, we all hate climate change. If these tips don't work, it's time to speak to a medical professional. More and more psychologists are being trained to treat eco-anxiety. Consult your family physician for a referral to a mental health professional. Eco-anxiety is completely real, it's normal, everyone here has it, and it's not your fault at all. So I'm going to be passing it back to Gabby to keep going.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you for all those wonderful personal anecdotes as well. We're really glad to know that we all experience this because it also will motivate us as a community to keep going. So now that we've heard so much about eco-anxiety, which can be anxiety-inducing to hear, and how it impacts our lives in so many ways, we'll be talking about one of the most amazing ways to alleviate this anxiety, feel grounded in your environment, and overall reinvent your life. The tool that we're talking about, of course, is the wonderful practice of mindfulness and meditation. So I'm going to pass it off to Aishwarya to continue and talk a bit more about that.
Amazing, thank you. All right, so many of you may know this, but meditation is an ancient practice that roots date back to ancient Indian texts known as the Vedas. And meditation is an integral part of the Buddhist religion. It is described by multiple Hindu philosophers, authors, and more as a deeper concentration of the mind. Nowadays, we can also see that meditation has been practiced in one form or another, even virtually, in every religion recorded in history. And it is defined as focusing the mind on a particular object thought, or activity to train attention and awareness. Now, while meditation is often used for religious purposes, many people practice it independently of any religion or spiritual beliefs or practices. Meditation can also be used as a psychotherapeutic technique. In recent years, the systematic method of regulating attention, known as meditation, is now being incorporated into psychotherapeutic practices and linked in surprising ways to other healing traditions, including cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, whether you are choosing to do meditation through a spiritual belief or not, it truly does have wonderful side effects and can become your best friend. But just remember, you can practice meditation and it definitely does not have to be related in a spiritual manner. But it's really, really important that you educate yourself on the historic and cultural significance of meditation. Because remember, no one likes cultural appropriation, and it's really, really important that you educate yourself. All right, I'm going to pass it on to Gabby now to continue talking about what meditation is.
Thank you so much. So Aishwarya is absolutely right. Meditation has extreme historical roots. And if we're practicing any kind of practice that isn't directly created by our ancestors or anything, we need to learn about it before we actually practice it so we can fully enjoy it and respect it. So meditation can have a wide array of benefits, such as helping to reduce stress or improving sleep or enhancing your sense of self. Meditation has an effect on many issues that can affect somebody. While the effects are moderate and vary from person to person, the act of regularly taking time for self-reflection has great benefits for anyone who can find their own way to meditate. Meditation shouldn't be thought of as a cure for all your problems, but more of as a tool or routine that you use to center yourself and just experience existing and being present. A personal anecdote of mine as well. I learned a lot about meditation this year through a great course I took. And something I learned is that not only does meditation have such an amazing impacts in the moment, obviously, but it has incredible long-term impacts. Not only are your cognitive functions in your brain amazing while you're doing it, but say 3 weeks into just meditating 10 times a day, your brain looks awesome and you feel a lot better. So yes, I'm going to pass it on back to Megan now. She can tell us a bit more of ways to meditate.
I think I've just been convinced to start meditating again. Like I tried, but it didn't work for me. But the good thing is that there's many different ways to meditate, and we're just gonna go through a few of them. So hopefully you can find one that works for you and maybe test them all out and see which one works. So concentration meditation teaches you how to focus your mind. It's the foundation for other forms of meditation. Heart-centered meditation involves quieting the mind and bringing awareness to the heart, an energy center in the middle of the chest. And mindfulness meditation encourages you to focus objectively on negative thoughts as they move through your mind so you can achieve a state of calm.
Now, Tai Chi and Qigong are moving forms of meditation that combine physical exercise with breathing and focus. Transcentual meditation is a well-known technique in which you repeat a mantra, a word. Basically, a mantra means a word or a phrase or sound, right? So like, for example, when I used to meditate with my dad, we would always say Om. And that was just our little mantra. And of course, that does have a bit of religious significance, but obviously yours can be absolutely anything. And so we use this to quiet our own thoughts and to achieve greater awareness. Now, walking meditation, I know not many people know about this, but it's really cool. Walking meditation turns your focus to both body and mind as you breathe in time with your footsteps. And here are some great meditation resources you can use. So we're going to be sending a link in the chat too, but you know what? I'll just talk about them. So first, We Make the Beast Beautiful by Sarah Wilson. It discusses anxiety and self-care, mindfulness practices. Sahara Rose Kathabi, search her up. She has some amazing books and a podcast you can listen to. Deepak Chopra's incredible work. Thich Nhat Hanh, who has some wonderful books, including one on a really beginner introduction guide to mindfulness. And you can check out the link that our wonderful tech people just sent into the chat. And it's basically a meditation app developed by and for the Black community. And you can also check out the Headspace Netflix series along with their guided meditation apps, the Calm guided meditation app, and so many more. I know that was a lot, but I promise, like, you don't even need to use all of that. Just set a timer for 5 minutes, sit in silence. I don't know, turn off your light. I like to put Christmas lights up. I know that may sound odd, but I love to put Christmas lights up and like just dim all the rest of the lights and just sit. It's amazing, I promise. And yeah, just listen to your breathing and just let any noises or distractions come and go. And it's just a great and valid way to seek mindfulness in your life, because all of us need to breathe. We just need to sit back sometimes.
Okay, everybody, so I'm going to be talking about some of the struggles of meditation, because I'm sure you all know how important it is and how great it is, but it can be really difficult to start and also be strong enough to kind of keep going. So I have to say, meditation is not easy. Although we're saying just sit in silence for 5 minutes, that's a really difficult thing to do, and it can be difficult and more difficult for different kinds of people. One thing you can do is just kind of find like a pocket of peace whenever you're walking or just in a silent kind of situation, and just try to listen to your breathing and experience where you are. I do this all the time in the morning and it feels amazing. So often when meditating, people tend to think about their future, past, and the stresses of their everyday life. Basically everything but the moment you're in, which is the whole point of meditation. Some tips to deal with these challenges is to focus on specific things rather than outside thoughts. A great strategy is to focus on your breathing, because it's always happening, and how your body feels on whatever seat or cushion you're on. Put your attention towards your body instead of what's happening on your mind. Just remember to, if you hear any noise or if you have any noise going on in your head, just let it come and go, because thoughts are just thoughts, and your body is way more important to listen to and ground yourself in. So now we're going to be passing the spotlight over for a second to one of our new members at Fridays for Future Toronto. I'm so excited to hear them speak, Aviya to lead us in a really quick group meditation. So you can get settled into whatever position is more comfortable for you. Aviya, love your background, super cute. And we're just so excited to hear this. So yeah, everybody get comfy. We can't wait to hear you.
All right, thank you so much. Hi everyone. So right now we are going to start a little meditation to help us ground ourselves. And in this crazy world, we can feel overwhelmed and burnt out, and that's why it's just so critical to give ourselves a few minutes for consciousness and allow ourselves to relax. So I'm also going to be kind of teaching a really helpful breathing technique to help you center yourself if you're feeling overwhelmed. So let's start it. So I want you guys to close your eyes if you haven't done so already, and just take a deep breath. Feel your lungs expand and contract with every breath you take. Notice your throat open up when you feel the oxygen go through it. Feel your nostrils flare out a bit whenever you breathe, and your chest rising and falling. Just understand what your body is doing in this simple act of breathing. Whenever you breathe, you are delivering life-giving oxygen to every part of your body. Feel the oxygen go to every muscle, every vein, every cell in your body, and allow yourself to completely calm down. A really helpful way to cope with anxiety is to count your breaths and just notice your body. So, I want you guys to put your hand in front of you. Try to keep your eyes closed, but if you want to open them, that is totally okay. And what I want you guys to do is start by your thumb and trace your fingers as you breathe. So start when you breathe in, trace your thumb till you get to the tip of your finger, hold your breath, and then as you breathe out, trace your finger all the way back down to the bottom, and then hold for another second. This is really beneficial because you get that tactile way to ground by feeling your fingers as well as calming down through your breath. So let's try it. So we're going to breathe in for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 2, and then breathe out for another 4. So let's do it. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, and then exhale, 2, 3, 4. Let's do it again. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. We're just going to do it one last time. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. So this is something you can do whenever you're feeling overwhelmed or just stressed and you just need to ground and center yourself. To end off this really quick meditation, we are going to do some affirmations. If you're unfamiliar with affirmations, I'm going to say a few sentences, and if you feel comfortable, you can repeat after me. It's helpful to say them out loud, but if you don't want to, you can always just say it in your head. I am not responsible for the dysfunction of others. I am enough. Taking care of myself is not selfish. It's crucial. I am actively taking time for myself, and that's okay. I understand my limits, and I understand it's okay to have limits. Now take one more deep breath and open your eyes if you haven't done so already. Just remember that you are doing everything in your power to help this crazy world, which is amazing, and you should be so proud of yourself. And it's also important to make yourself a priority sometimes. All right, thank you so much for listening to this little meditation. I hope you enjoyed it.
Amazing. Thank you, Aviya.
Yes, thank you so much, Aviya. Sorry, tech stuff is confusing sometimes. I feel so much more focused and present right now. I'm feeling so good. Thank you so much. And also thank you for those affirmations. I'm personally going to be adding loving yourself as an act of resistance to my affirmations after this. I also just want to add quickly, because Aviya did do such a beautiful meditation for us. Things like affirmations, manifestation, healing power of crystals. I think these are all things that we're hearing a lot nowadays, and they can be super duper beneficial. But remember, these also all have cultural ties. So please, before practicing any of these, please go learn about them. I understand that they make you super happy, but I'm sure it's going to be a lot more respectful, honorable, and meaningful to you if you know the background of these. So as we get into our next section, feel free to use your meditation skills to focus on what you're hearing, and feel free to be mindful in what you're listening to. Okay, I'm going to pass it off to another one of our MCs.
Thank you, Gabby. I love those last two sentences, unintended puns. But yeah, so now we're going into visualization. So visualization is a type of meditation tool in which you visualize yourself achieving a future goal or being in a calming place. What you do is you close your eyes, breathe deeply, and just visualize these things. Now, visualization is a very effective method of stress relief that is proven to calm your thoughts, at least temporarily. It has many benefits, including improved sleep, greater self-confidence, improved mental and emotional health, and an improved ability to deal with stress.
Visualization. I'm sorry, that's a difficult word for me. But yeah, visualization is also an incredible tool for caring and motivating your community to create real change, and not just in the sense of goal making, but also having the strength to recognize the issues around you and have the courage to imagine a better world. Visualization has the ability to enact real change by starting conversations about how to obtain these wishes and dreams for a safer and more inclusive future. Speaking on this topic more in depth and leading us through some visualization himself is a fellow member of from Fridays for Future Toronto, Matthew Freelander. Take it away.
Yes, thank you, Megan. So the way visualization, at least how I treat it, is trying to imagine, what is trying to imagine, also just reminding ourselves of what sort of future we're trying to fight for and wanting to create. So, for example, how exactly does a world that has the police defunded, what does that look like? So for me, what that may look like is, say, when someone is suffering from a serious mental health crisis, rather than obviously a police officer going up, is you have a therapist or some sort of a social or care worker going up and just trying to sort of help them out, talk them down, and just like give them the all the time and attention that they need in order to bring them down to sort of a calm level. And if this person, say, has a sort of a history of crises or and that sort of stuff, then perhaps that person needs to be taken to a shelter and just needs to be given a bit more attention and needs to be sort of given more access to resources and things like that. Of course, the therapist wouldn't go be alone. They would be part of a community response team, a CRT, which would be made up of social and care workers and other people who may help homeless people sort of get off the street and direct them towards affordable housing and some of the projects. Of course, Fridays for Future's main focus is about renewable energy and things like that. So what might that look like? Fortunately, a professor at Stanford University ran the numbers on that. They did a thing called the Solutions Project, and they found out of how exactly that all breaks down in Canada as well as here in Toronto and other major cities. So, for example, in the prairies, how do we get the money? Well, all those corporations that have their money stashed in tax havens, like in Panama and the Paradise Islands, we go after them, and we hold those corporations to accountability, and we use that money to help build wind farms, solar arrays, and geothermal power plants to help create green jobs and help retrain and obviously help retrain old oil and gas workers. And this, of course, goes with tandem with indigenous rights. Just imagine what the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People looks like if implemented under a sort of decolonial lens, and how with it the Canadian government is forced to sort of reshape its laws and policies to accommodate for Indigenous people and their understanding of the world. And of course, with that goes with all the recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the Federal Inquiry into the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, and the numerous other commissions that the federal government has done looking into and addressing Indigenous problems. I think in this article I came across earlier today probably brings this point to a head, saying how it says, to be clear, climate despair does not square with current scientific understandings. We are in trouble, not screwed. Actions taken now and the next decade, individually and collectively, can make a difference. The news on climate impacts and climate science may feel like a march of doom, but climate scientists argue that it is not too late and there is an uncertainty in the extent of climate impacts we have guaranteed ourselves. We have not reached the point of no return. Yeah. And there you go.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Visualization is incredibly important for your mental health, whether or not you're an activist. And just a personal anecdote as well. I have a lot of trouble with this. And I think a lot of activists or just people who experience any kind of climate, eco-anxiety, eco-distress, they have a lot of trouble doing this. So I think that not only will this kind of visualization really motivate us, but it can also bring a lot of strength, to have the strength to really imagine a better world, because I'm using the word strength a lot, but it takes so much strength and hope to actually be able to organize a future that you're excited about. So thank you again, Matthew, so much. And please check out all the cool resources that we will hopefully link soon that Matthew mentioned. So now that we've learned so much about this and why self-care and anxiety and your mental health in general is valid and deserves to be discussed and fought for, we'll be hearing from our amazing panelists who are using their voices and platform to discuss these topics and are actively shaping a future that they are passionate about and they can visualize themselves. So here's some information about these lovely folks. Before we get to our main questions of the night, I'll pass it to another MC to start introducing our beautiful panelists.
I am loving my job right now because I get to introduce these wonderful ladies. Okay, let's get started. So our first panelist, their name is Aviya Medic, and she is a 17-year-old menstrual activist and mental health advocate. How cool is that? Residing in the Greater Toronto Area. She works as the Vice President of the menstrual equity organization, Bleed the North, as well as co-founded Canada's first ever National Period Day. Beyond all of that, she is simply a high school student learning how to navigate through stress and self-care. Mia, we are so glad to have you here.
And I have the honor of introducing our next panelist, Sidney Moore. She's a 17-year-old photographer who has been working with this medium since childhood. She struggled with mental health since middle school and uses art to cope and express herself. She aims to raise awareness for mental health with her art and fight the stigma. She is planning to pursue a career in photography after high school. Cindy, we are so excited to have you here tonight.
Amazing. Okay, and last but not least, Keerat Dhami. Keerat Dhami is an undergraduate student in the University of Toronto's Geography and Planning Department. Keerat's interest in creating just communities and regions resilient to ecological challenges and change prompted her to join the Community Climate Council in Peel Region. There, she coordinates comprehensive community-based climate action projects that promote climate literacy in the region of Peel. Keerat is also the founder of Our Climate Cafe, a cyberspace at the intersection of the climate crisis and community well-being. These cafe sessions take place once a month for those working in the climate movement or those just concerned about climate change to convene and practice self-care and collective care. Let me just add in, I went to a climate cafe once and it was so cool. Y'all should go. Okay, so we are so excited to have you here, Keerat. Thank you for being here.
Hey, yes, we are so excited. Can you guys tell? We're super excited to have you all here, and we're so grateful for all the work that you guys all do. And we're so excited to hear about it as well in these upcoming questions. So let's get to these questions because we want to hear from you already and we want to shut up and just listen to your beautiful voices. And remember, viewers, you are more than welcome to ask questions for our panelists in the question box as well, and hopefully they can get to them. So yes, we're super excited, and I think Aishwarya, you're going to ask the first question.
Amazing. All right. So our first question is, now self-care can be healthy or rewarding practices, right? And self-soothing are usually just unhealthy coping mechanisms or short-term reliefs that are often buy into capitalistic ideas that consuming equals happiness, that is retail therapy, right? And defining and drawing a line between these two, which is self-care and just self-soothing activities, can be very difficult often at times. Now, how do you identify, practice, and balance these both in your lives? And I think our first person who could probably answer this, Mia?
Yeah, so I don't want to act like I'm perfect because I'm not. And this is still something I'm navigating. And especially during like the really hard lockdown that's been going on in the GTA really recently, I've had trouble finding the distinction between resting and then self-sabotage. And for me, that's really hard because my coping mechanism when I burn out is really just getting in bed and doing nothing. And I'm like an avid advocate for rest. You don't always have to be working. You don't always have to be productive. But for me, there's a certain line between resting and then over resting and getting consumed in my thoughts and just staying stuck in my bed. And for like, I'm going to be completely honest. This is something I went through 3 weeks ago when I was in my burnout. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to do school. And I think it's recognizing when you're starting to feel these bad habits, when you're recognizing when you're losing a routine, you're losing the things that you love to do. And I'm not going to say that feeling these ways and not over consuming or getting into bad habits is completely avoidable, because for me, sometimes it's not. Sometimes I burn out and I fall into habits that I'm not necessarily happy with. But when it comes, realize it. Notice that you're not feeling like yourself. You're not doing things that you would normally be doing. You're in bed too much, or you're not talking to friends, or you're isolating yourself, and then saying, okay, where can I go from here? Journaling, meditation, any of the coping mechanisms we said today, really sometimes it takes just starting and doing a small task or a small act to make yourself feel more like yourself. And for me, it can be texting my friend and being like, hey, can we just FaceTime and play a stupid game on like my just can we just call and just talk? It doesn't have to be productive, doesn't have to be anything like useful. Just laugh and feel more like myself.
Had to find the mute button mic there, but thank you. That was very, very informative, and I'm sure a lot of people watching today have educated themselves a lot, you know, and we're all here to just talk about what we're going through, right? So we have a question in the chat right now, and it says, what has been your best way to cope with anxiety and stress and imposter syndrome during the pandemic? Honestly, whoever gave that question, very good. That's what I've been asking for a very long time. So I guess this question can be directed to all three of you. So if you guys could just go one by one, talking and answering, because I think everyone has different ways to cope, right? And I'm very interested to hear what each one of yours is. So Sydney, would you like to start off?
Sure. I mean, a lot of the ways that I cope pre-pandemic was spending time with my friends. The pandemic has really affected that. And I think going on group FaceTimes and texting them and just reaching out to them for support has been something that's really, really helpful for me, even though I can't see them in person. And just kind of finding the balance between isolating yourself and because of what you're dealing with and reaching out for help.
Amazing. Thank you. Keerat, would you like to answer that too?
Sure. Similar to what Mia and Sydney both said, I'm glad that they both included how important those connections are with their loved ones and continuing to foster those connections. I would say what you guys have created here, Gabby, Megan, Aishwarya, as well as the services that both Lisa and Matthew provided as well, is also a coping mechanism in ways this gathering of community is really necessary in times of crisis. And I want to also just commend both Mia and Sydney for both mentioning non-capitalistic ways of coping as well. I think capitalism has a very interesting way of weirdly accounting for the insecurities and instabilities that it itself creates by simultaneously creating conditions like the mental health crisis, the pandemic. We could say we're in and amongst two pandemics currently, and then of course the climate crisis, and then consequently turning around and then marketing things like silk pajamas and candles for soothing mechanisms. And so it's necessary to sometimes, and I'm not shaming anyone for buying a scented candle or a silk pajama. I also consume these things. It's necessary, but I'm asking you to be also aware of the ways that late stage capitalism can contribute to today's mental health crisis, and ways we can actively organize self-care outside of those systems, and community is huge.
Thank you so much. And I love how you brought in how capitalism kind of feeds into our insecurities. That was amazing. So Mia, do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, so I want to address that not everyone has a support system right now. Not everyone has friends that they can go to, or a safe family home right now, or are living alone and maybe have distance from a lot of friends. I think a lot of people during the pandemic, myself included, really struggled with social interaction. I made the joke where it's like, I don't know how to talk to anyone anymore, because it was very easy to isolate yourself. It was very easy to lose those connections. And when you feel like you don't have the support system, it's like everyone's saying, go ask for help, go talk to someone, but you don't feel like you have anyone. And I want to say, I get that. You're not alone with that. Everyone here is nodding. So obviously we all get that and understand that. And I want to say there are ways you can help yourself by yourself, with a journal, writing things down, watching a show that you like, binging YouTube videos, listening to blasting SZA in your room and just dancing like no one is watching. It sounds difficult, and it's really easy to feel alone. And I'm not like, I literally have felt alone so many times during this pandemic. It's like, I feel like it's a quite often like a normal thing to feel, especially like with like young people. And it's okay to be alone and to learn how to love being alone. And that's a journey I'm on. And it's like, it's okay if I don't have a huge friend group right now. It's okay if I don't have anyone around me that I can talk to, because I can blast music and dance around and start reading a book or journal. And like my favorite thing, I'm going on a tangent, but my favorite thing with my journal, which is literally right here, is brain dumping and then writing down everything that's making me anxious. Literally everything, dumping it on a paper, it gets it all out. And then I think what we still need to address from the question is imposter syndrome. And I want to say this, I know with all like our bios, it's like activist, First National Period Day, this, and it's easy to be like, I don't do any of that. LinkedIn is like a big black hole for me. It's okay to just not be productive or not to be boosting your resume during this time. Like, that is okay. And everyone feels imposter syndrome. All these people you see on LinkedIn or on Instagram, all these huge activists, founders, they feel imposter syndrome. You're not alone. And I feel like everyone here who has done incredible things, they're all nodding. So you're not alone with that.
That was so like validating. I don't know, maybe it was just me who felt that, but like when you said you're not alone, amazing. Thank you. So I'm going to pass it on to Gabby now, who will be asking our second question.
Amazing. All those answers have me so inspired, and honestly made me feel very warm, because I really feel all of those too. And yes, Keerat, thank you for mentioning about self-care. We're definitely going to be talking about real self-care and what it can mean to a lot of people a little bit later in the panel, and a little bit more on burnout near the end of this question section. So don't worry, we'll get any of those questions answered. And yeah, I'd love to just summarize kind of what Mia said as well. I know that at the start of this pandemic, I really needed some kind of self-care time. I really needed some time to just be alone with myself, and I loved that. But hey, it's been like around a year now, and there's a very, very big difference between spending time and exploring yourself and being isolated from the rest of the world. So yes, I totally agree with that, and really finding those pockets of peace with yourself and just learning about yourself, enjoying time with yourself, and blasting SZA in your room. I like that example. I like that example a lot. Yes, exactly. It feels like 10 years, Jade, and I totally agree. It doesn't always feel the best in self-care. So I totally understand that. And on the topic of self-care is our next question. So the history of self-care has major ties to activists from the civil rights movement and a lot of folks from around those times. For example, the Black Panther Party coined the term self-care in the 1950s. And members throughout encouraged practices like yoga and mindfulness and really, really important things. And these were people doing really difficult things and feeling a lot of pain as a community, and they still managed to prioritize and balance their self-care. So how do you, beautiful panelists, balance your self-care with your passion for any intense movement that you really, really care about? This can be an art movement, a social justice movement, any movement that you really, really are passionate about and can lead you to burnout or stress or a lot of anger sometimes. So how do these movements help you or derail you from staying grounded in these self-care practices? And how do you balance these self-care practices? Because it can be really difficult. I'd like to start, Keerat, would you like to start with that?
Yeah, of course, sure. I'm really glad that you mentioned the ways in which revolutionaries, like whether it was Erica Huggins of the Black Panther Party, who later actually kind of coerced Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, the co-founders of the Black Panther Party, into practicing meditation and yoga with her. And so how revolutionary self-care is. And I think it was Angela Davis who in an interview in 2018 talked about maybe the prospects of the party and the movement itself if more and more people really did turn inward first and then did the external work. And personally, with my own ancestry, I come from North India, or my parents do, and I've personally practiced yoga with both my parents, my grandparents, starting from the ages of 17 and 18. And it was coming to the mat during some of my more difficult times in my life. And something Mia mentioned, those moments of care with oneself, and then turning outwards to your community. And so doing the work on my mat personally helped me then do the work off of the mat. And so yoga for me, and Erica Huggins' story of her own journey with yoga really spoke. And it's as simple as even one other way I can mention in terms of self-care and navigating the climate crisis particularly is personally for myself, conversation. I'm a huge conversationalist. I can spend hours on a phone talking to friends. And it was this kind of coping mechanism that led me to then just create something as simple as the Climate Cafe, where I thought, hey, if I'm someone who enjoys talking through their feelings, maybe more and more people do too. And so come to the space, dump your feelings. I mean, we can talk about trauma dumping and maybe the issues surrounding that, but dump your feelings in a safe way, in a safe space. And then when you leave that Zoom session, maybe you're a little more rejuvenated, a lot more re-energized to do the work. Of course, talking out your feelings is just one way, and I'm sure many people aren't okay with that either. And that's where things like journaling and whatever else comes in. But those are two ways that I've personally been able to help myself, help navigate my work.
Thank you so much, Keerat. That was so inspirational to hear, and I feel so much more rejuvenated already. And this is a great time to mention, guys, go check out our Climate Cafe after this, because I know that you guys also have an amazing episode coming up, which I'm very excited to listen to. Sydney, would you like to also kind of answer this question about balancing your self-care and your passion?
Yeah, for sure. So I tend to talk a lot about mental health, and that can be really, really draining really, really fast. So I think recognizing when I need to take a break and kind of just spend some time by myself. And also social media is a big piece of that, because a lot of people use that as a big tool in their activism. And sometimes I feel a lot of pressure to always be on social media and to keep up with with what a lot of people are talking about. And I think taking time to recognize that it's okay to take some space away from that and work on your own coping mechanisms, like the ones that we've been talking about, is really, really important. Because for example, like if my mental health is poor and I feel very burnt out and tired, I can't do the work that I want to be doing, and I can't reach the goals that I want to be reaching, and then it doesn't help anybody.
Oh my God, thank you, Sydney. Sorry, I'm so tired. But yeah, that's absolutely true. Can you guys tell that I'm a little bit burnt out too? All these tips are totally helping me. And Mia, I'd also love to hear what you have to say. I remember even speaking about this myself on like a Bleed the North panel, and it really, really inspired me, especially what Sydney just said about how kind of recovering from burnout not only helps you get to an even better place, also helps people around you, also helps your community and whatever cause you're really fighting for you to do better at that. So yeah, Mia, any tips on kind of balancing this?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I want to acknowledge that I'm in a place of privilege as a white cis woman. I have the choice of the causes I want to advocate for. I get to choose to be an activist. I get to choose to be in the social justice movements, where for a lot of people, it's not a choice. They're fighting for themselves. They're fighting for their own rights, where for me, I have the choice. I don't experience period poverty, yet I have the choice to fight period poverty. So I want to acknowledge that. But I think within and working within the social justice movement, when you're trying to advocate for every single cause and you're trying to post things in your story, you're trying to be as intersectional as possible, you're always trying to advance the social justice movement and make sure you're advocating, it gets exhausting. because you can't advocate for every single cause. And I see this on TikTok all the time, but so TikTokers that are like labeled as social justice TikTokers get flooded with comments like, why haven't you spoken about this? Why haven't you spoken about this? Why haven't you spoken about this? And I think up until a certain extent, you cannot be a strong advocate or activist if you yourself are tired. At that point, it becomes performative. And that's what we don't want. We don't want performative activism. So I realized that I can't promote or I can't speak on everything, especially if I don't have the energy to educate myself on something. Because I don't want to be speaking on something, promoting content, putting things out. If I have no idea what I'm talking about, what's the point of that? I'm going to be promoting things and it's just going to be performative. And I think it's understanding that in order to be an activist, you also need to understand what you're preaching for and what you're advocating for, and that takes energy. And if you don't have that energy right now, it's okay to pause and just stop. And in terms of with menstrual activism, we're constantly doing some type of project, whether it's in service, advocacy, or education. And these projects are on like a long period of time. Working within period policy or creating educational toolkits, that takes time. And you don't always have the energy to be working on that. And it's okay to be like, hey, these next 2 weeks, I know are going to be rough for me. I need to step away. And that's the beauty of working within teams and saying, I can't do this right now. Why don't we take a pause on this project? Because the thing with especially menstrual activism, we have the flexibility with our timeline. We get to say, okay, let's take a pause right now because working these 2 weeks and burning everyone out is not going to be productive. So it's really like allowing yourself to pause, because there's no point of burning yourself out even more and then not getting as much done.
That is so true. I can't even add stuff to that. That's just absolutely true. Thank you so much, Mia. Yeah, I think that what we've got from these first two questions is definitely how prioritizing your mental health and your well-being and listening to your body is extremely important, especially when we're fighting large causes. We want to be as genuine as possible. And that's actually something that we're going to be touching on after this amazing panelist Q&A. So stick around for that, please. Yeah, I think that we're going to be moving on to our next question now, led by Megan.
I just want to say that you all sound so smart. Well, like you guys all are smart, but I'm actually learning so much, like especially what Mia said. Like I relate to that so much. Like I see all these posts and every single cause is equally as important. And I don't like the feeling of having to choose between which ones I'm like actively advocating about. But I obviously need to look after myself as well. I can't be an activist 24/7. I try my best not to be. But yeah, like these points are actually really helping me, and I hope that it's helping everybody else who's listening as well. So the third question is, do you think that an environment that actively prioritizes the importance of mental well-being is possible? And how can we move on to foster systems of radical community care that extends beyond our regular spaces and build more structural systems of care? And I guess, Sydney, do you want to start by answering that question?
Yeah, so I think when we're thinking of like just interpersonally, educating yourself to support those in your friend group and community about the experiences that you may not have that they're going through is really, really important, just to be support systems for each other. And also recognizing the fact that like in a systemic kind of approach, mental health support isn't just like checking in on friends, and it's more than that. It's affordable housing, livable wages, affordable and free access to therapy and counseling and prescriptions. And that is a huge issue that would help a lot of people going through mental health issues. And I know it's something that's affected me personally quite a bit in my journey to deal with what I go through and recover. And I think as a society, we also need to work towards seeing mental health and mental illness and poor mental health as a valid reason to, you know, miss a school day or miss an assignment due date as much as we see physical illness as that. But yeah.
Yeah, those are all amazing points. And like, honestly, I talk about this all the time, but as a country that prides ourselves for free healthcare, the mental health support is not free or accessible to the point that it should be. And I definitely agree, like mental health should be treated the exact same way physical health is treated, and that should become an issue that we're all fighting for in whatever way we can, even if that's in our own friend group and showing up for our friends. And I'm gonna pass that question on to Mia to answer.
Yeah, so I kind of want to give it from the perspective of working in like the nonprofit realm, working within a team of activists. Because at least for me personally, working in a team, leading a team, I always want to make sure I'm meeting everyone's needs. I want to make sure that I'm there for everyone. And for me personally, I deal with anxiety. So I can be like, hey, let's not do that because that might be triggering or that might be harmful. I know, like, let's not do that because that would make me nervous. That would make me anxious. But I cannot, and I do not know everyone else's needs or everyone else's triggers. And I think the same thing with how we cannot cover every single like issue or social issue going on in the world right now. You yourself cannot know every single trigger, every single sign. As much as you try to educate yourself and know, you can't ensure it. So I think the best thing is to create that open environment where people freely can feel like they can come to you in private or openly and discuss their needs or their struggles, because as much as you try, you can't always understand or know what everyone is going through. So forming that open environment.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I've seen a lot of things coming up on TikTok talking about trigger warnings. I think that's like a sensitive topic. We won't get into that obviously in detail, but yeah, you can't like kind of worry about every single person at the same time. Like that's not feasible as much as you want to be accessible. And I think just creating an open environment where people can come and talk to you and talk about what they need is important. You can't just guess what everyone needs in a way. And lastly, I'll pass it on to Keerat to answer that question.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I echo what both Mia and Sydney have said. And that's entirely what I agree with as well. And something that Sydney said that's very necessary to highlight, and larger corporate not-profit campaigns such as Bell Let's Talk or whatever else don't, is the systemic failures that have led to our mental health crisis. And if we're thinking of solutions, I'm not sure if systemically we can solve these issues. It's about effectively abolishing those systems that cause the mental health crisis. And one way that I've been advocating for more and more within the places I work in is mutual aid projects as one way of advocating for mental health within our communities. And so rent relief, community gardens and community fridges for those affected by food deserts, and whatever else it might be that's especially been exacerbated during this pandemic. Those levels of mutual aid is one way that we as a community, as maybe more privileged people within our communities, can effectively help those that are more vulnerable, and then more vulnerable to mental health issues as well. And I think that's really necessary to incorporate into the conversation moving forward around mental health.
That's actually an amazing perspective. I've never looked at it that way, but it makes a lot of sense. You have to look at like the cause of a lot of these issues. And yeah, that's definitely something we should be talking about more. Thank you so much for that point. And I'll pass it off to Aishwarya to ask our final question.
Amazing, thank you. So our final question is actually from our audience, which is amazing. Thank you for whoever sent that in. It's very, very important. So our last question is, does anyone have tips for dealing with burnout with a mental health condition? And I will start off with Sydney, if that's all right.
Yeah, this is something that I deal with quite a bit as someone who suffers from a lot of severe mental health problems. And I think from if you have the supports like therapy and stuff like that, it's really important to bring that up with those people. But if you don't, I find looking up things that people would usually talk about as a therapist really helps, because then you can get that same kind of advice in a general perspective, and also just allowing yourself to feel like burned out and recognizing that that's valid. because a lot of the times when you deal with mental health, your brain will try to convince yourself that whatever you're feeling isn't valid or you're wrong, and recognizing that that's not the case is really, really important.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure a lot of people here today needed that validation. You know, a lot of the times, like, my brain likes to tell me that too. So thank you. Does Mia want to answer this question?
Yeah. So to be completely honest, I don't avoid burnout. And I don't know who else has to hear that, but I don't avoid it. It happens, it comes, and we're in a pandemic. I'm doing school full time on Zoom for 7 hours a day and expect to go after that and do homework, plus be an activist, and then take care of myself. So yes, I burn out, and that's okay. And sometimes it's not avoidable. You can't avoid burnout when there are 100 different things going on and you're handling political unrest and the climate crisis and school and just taking care of yourself. You can't always avoid it. And then when it does come, it's learning, how do I approach this now? Okay, it came. I'm not going to be mean to myself and saying, oh, I could have avoided this burnout. But sometimes you couldn't have. So it's saying, okay, I'm feeling this way. How am I going to approach this? Maybe I start meditating, journaling, reaching out to a friend, yoga, and the biggest thing I can say is pay attention to the way you speak to yourself, because you manifest the way you talk to yourself. If you're being mean to yourself, you're constantly being rude to yourself all the time. Maybe that's why you're not feeling so great and it's harder to progress through this burnout.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. You know, a different perspective that I think all of us need today, because honestly, I just beat myself up after, like, if I burnt out, like, I was just like, why did you do it? Why did you do it? And then I read like full on rants in my diary. That is what I do. So looking at it through that view and lens is amazing. Thank you so much. So yeah, that was it for our entire panel. Thank you so much to our speakers. So I will pass it on to Gabby right now to continue on with our wonderful discussion.
Yes, thank you so much, panelists. You guys are so amazing. And feel free to put your organizations or ats or like whatever way we can support you in the chat for our attendees. That is super duper important. Yeah, so this is now the final section of our panels, of our panel. Yeah, this is the final section. So thank you for listening to all of this. This is one section that is really, really important, kind of gonna wrap up everything we talked about. So get out your journals or any kind of writing device you have. It's okay to not have a fancy like moleskin leather journal. Okay, you can type on the notes of your phone. I do that all the time. So yeah, so get out your journals, because throughout this final section, we really want you taking down any kind of goals. That would be amazing. So I am going to pass it on to Megan to kind of start talking about our little final section about personal commitments, goal setting, and more.
Yay, I'm so excited for this part because we've talked about a lot, right? And it was okay if you didn't pick up on everything because there was a lot of information, and I think that's good because you're able to remember the things that resonate with you and try out some of these tips. But now is a good time to kind of center yourself and think about what we talked about and make some personal commitments. So we've talked about ways to train your mind to be more loving, patient, and focused. We discussed outside effects that can make this more difficult. And we've heard from some amazing and incredible speakers and panelists on their personal circumstances and specialized areas and how that affects their well-being. So now we want you to think about yourself. Just as we make commitments and goals and advocate for the causes we care about, we need to make these commitments to ourselves as well.
Amazing. Thank you, Megan. All right. So Gabby kind of introduced it in the start, and, you know, she kind of like told you guys to get out your journals. And the reason is because we're going to be doing a full-on interactive activity with all of you today, right now, right here. And it is going to be so much fun. Like, honestly, this is my favorite part of this entire panel. Maybe I shouldn't have a favorite part because I'm like a host, but you know what? I do. So yeah, get out your journals if you don't have it already. And we're going to set some goals together. And again, this journal doesn't like have to be like a book. I just like books, but it can literally be your phone, a document, a sticky note, anything, absolutely anything. All right. So yeah, and we're just going to set some goals together because goal setting isn't easy, and having a support system, yes, we all are your support system now. You can reach out to us anytime. So yes, having this support system is amazing and really, really helps. And Gabby, Megan, and I are going to do this with you, with all of you. And we want you all to write what you kind of write in your journal in the chat. And obviously no need to like write out personal information, but you know, just like you'll see. So yeah, and like just to make you guys feel comfortable, we'll be doing this with you. So I'm going to pass it on to Gabby right now to talk about the different types of goals that we can set.
Yes, so happy you all have your journals out. We will be getting to those very soon, I promise. I just want to set out some little things about goal setting because goal setting is so hard. I don't know about you guys, but New Year's resolutions terrify me to my core. I don't enjoy them. Goal setting is really, really difficult, specifically habit setting. I feel like they're either way too restrictive or way too loose, and they're really difficult. But we make goals, genuine goals, for causes we all the time, like all the time. So climate or social justice, for example, without a genuine goal or purpose or specific ask, our actions literally become meaningless and over time, performative. A lot of us activists, I think as Mia mentioned a little bit ago too, a lot of us activists have certain privileges that ultimately make us fall into performative spaces, whether we want to or not. We have the choice to. And a lot of the time we do this because we don't have a proper personal goal or commitment behind what we're fighting for. So in your journal now, you know, I'm using my phone. It's okay. It stores stuff very well. In your journal, take a moment to write down one word or phrase. I know that's hard. I know it's hard, that describes why you're an activist. And once again, guys, everybody can be activists, okay? You can be activist for yourself. You can be an activist for a movement, but always advocate for yourself and stuff you care about. So write down one word or phrase that describes why you're an activist. And you can share your word or phrase in the chat. I know that we're gonna be doing this too, so I will write something down. But I recommend doing this like a lot, like almost every single day this week. It really, really helps you and can motivate you for whatever cause you care about. So I would say to write that down right now. I'm going to be talking, so I may write it a little bit late, but I know Aishwarya and Megan will be doing that. And feel free to write down what you wrote down in the chat because we want to know and I need inspiration. Sydney, I love that. Okay, so my next thing about how we make genuine goals for causes we care about every day are self-care practices. Without listening to how our mind and body genuinely feel, we can choose to do self-soothing type things that can usually be kind of capitalistic, like putting on a face mask or lighting a candle, which once again, these can be calming things. These can be really nice things, but those may not be always working for us as acts of kindness to ourselves because we didn't think about why we chose to do them or in the first place. We didn't think about the commitments or goals of why we wanted to do it. So once again, listening to yourself is extremely important. I feel so bad that I'm not really journaling right now, but I'm going to ask you guys to continue journaling and write another bullet point, and you can put this in the chat as well, of what self-activities do you do, like for self-care, for acts of kindness, and why do you do them? That's kind of the most important part. Why do you do them? What's your motivation? Other than being kind to yourself, how do they make you feel? And what is something that you think will be truly helpful to your mind, body, and soul? So while you figure that out, I'm gonna go to our last kind of prompt. And I can't wait to see your guys' answers because I'm gonna be using these probably like every day of the week. Okay, so lastly, a really large example of how we make commitments to ourselves in genuine ways is the little things, like brushing your teeth or taking a shower. Setting goals to improve your well-being is not just self-care, it's self-preservation. It's listening to our bodies and what they need and making commitments to meeting what they need. I know for one, on my really, really, really bad days, I can forget about these kind of habits and I feel horrible. I really, really do. But kind of finding a community that tells you it's okay to do that. And on days when you do those habits that they're really proud of you, then that'll be amazing. So, yeah, they're not just habits. They're things that deserve recognition and they're forms of taking care of ourselves. So we now want you to write just one small little goal that'll make your day better, an action which you'll be doing to take care of yourself, and you can share it in that chat. So I'm going to share my answers in the meantime, so maybe you guys feel a bit more comfortable. So one reason why I'm an activist is definitely just empathy. I feel like sometimes we can all get caught up in some individual guilt being activists, and honestly sometimes place things like theories or documentaries above just listening to people. So I think that one word I'd use to describe myself as an activist and why I want to be is really just empathy. Aishwarya or Megan, do you guys want to share your answers to this? And once again, guys, you can write yours in the chat. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, definitely. For me, I guess I'll just say two because I don't want to take up too much time. But first, why I'm an activist, I don't know. I was thinking about it. And the first words that came to mind were like people and change. And then I really thought about why I'm an activist. Sometimes, and again, this is like me being genuine here. I literally thought it was just people and change. And I literally wrote that into the chat. And then I just took some time to think, wait, is that really why I'm an activist? And it turns out the word that I have in mind right now is understanding. And I feel like myself as an activist, the reason I'm an activist is to understand people, right? Because we're here to change the world. We're here to help people, but we need to understand each other and we need to work with each other in order to get there, right? And yeah, I feel like my role as an activist often is just like, again, Gabby said empathy, but for me, it's like always just kind of listening to people and understanding their perspective and trying to figure out where do I fit in within that perspective, right? And what is my role within this situation or within this crisis, etc. And yeah, okay, so for the last one, it's a self-care activity. I'm super excited to share mine because guess what mine is? Mine is for me to wake up tomorrow like kind of early, take a shower, and then dress up in the most cutest outfit ever. That is my self-care activity because I know that's going to make me feel better for like the rest of the day. It's going to just set my day in a positive view. And I want that, right? And those are those small things that you can really do to make your day so much better. And it really, really helps. And yeah, if anyone has more, please share them in the chat. We love to see them. And I'm sure everyone else would also maybe take that with them out of this panel too, right? So yeah, I guess we're gonna kind of end off this little section by just saying, remember, if you don't follow through with the goal or commitment, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up over it. Okay, it's done. You didn't follow through. Next. What do you do next? What are you gonna do next? You're gonna try, right? You're trying, and that's literally what matters. Appreciate the little things that you do for yourself. And some days, if that's sleeping in late, then let it be. You're doing yourself a favor. You're getting in some sleep. Okay, so I'm going to pass it on to Gabby right now to get to like the most, I feel like this is going to be our fiery power moment of this entire panel. So Gabby, kick it off.
Okay, thank you so much, Aishwarya. And guys, please feel free to put any of the journal prompts in the question box if you want to, or in the chat if you want to. Yeah, so this is kind of the final part of our panel, the big takeaway, if you will, even though we had so many amazing takeaways today. So not only is self-care essential in listening to and grounding ourselves, helping us live and survive, and in being more genuine in our nature, but self-care and loving yourself is an act of resistance. We named the panel that for a reason, and specifically because of the powerful quote similar to Audre Lorde's quote, which really inspired me to make this panel to begin with, which states, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare." So, reflect on that, let that simmer, go journal about it later. It's an excellent quote. And I mean, heck, it inspired me to make this panel, so it's kind of a big deal. Yeah, so no matter what cause you are fighting for, it is a very difficult road. And there are people who want to keep the status quo and will try to diminish your progress. and you cannot let them. Taking care of yourself and loving yourself is not only essential in making sure you are well enough to fight these causes, but also, quite frankly, a slap in the face to every system and institution who planted those doubts of yours in your mind of showing up for yourself and fighting for these causes as a bad thing in the first place. You really, really need to take care of yourself. It is an act of political warfare, for goodness sakes. Audre Lorde said it herself. She's incredible. So yeah, to end this last section of the panel, before we get to our thank yous and how glad we are to have you here, we'd love if everyone could write down some kind of affirmation about, self-care as an act of resistance. For example, my affirmation is self-care as an act of resistance. I think you guys have heard that quote too many times in the past 5 minutes, but it's a great quote. So if you want to write down any kind of affirmation in the chat, you know what? I'll say another one right now to inspire some folks. One affirmation that I love and I tell myself whenever I'm kind of doubting myself is that, oh God, it just slipped my mind. Oh yeah, I stand firmly in my truth and my power. This helps whether or not you're an activist. It always really, really helps me. So feel free to write your personal fave affirmation in the comment section. Oh my God, these already look so good. Okay, I'm looking at some of them, they're so good. But in the meantime, I just want to thank, on behalf of Fridays for Future Toronto, all of you. We would like to thank our panelists for being here with us today and offering their insights and answers to our questions. And we have truly learned so much and are certain that our attendees have as well. Oh my goodness, guys, these prompts are beautiful. I'm loving them. Okay, so we likewise just want to thank all of you, the attendees, for being here to discuss the important topics and also share, like all of these quotes, that we have drawn attention to today. This panel has been in the works for quite some time now, and the name on its own, Loving Yourself as an Act of Resistance, is a message to remember as mental health, eco-anxiety, and self-care result in very genuine and heartfelt emotions, especially amid the COVID-19 circumstances. We understand how these emotions may seem more excessive and self-burdening during this time. However, we hope that through this panel, you've become more aware of ways that you can take care of yourself and approach these matters. Remember that you and your mental and physical health are a priority. You must make the time to take care of yourself. And as discussed today, it does not have to be big accomplishments. Even the little things really matter and deserve recognition. You deserve to feel accomplished for the tasks you get done. And once again, you are not meant to be productive. If you get no tasks done, we still love you. We still appreciate you. So celebrate your wins and be proud of yourself, as we are of all of you. I also know that one of our past speakers, I think Matthew, wanted to tell us a really, really great self-quote or two, like a self-care quote. So I'll invite Matthew back to kind of speak more about that.
Yeah, so speaking, since one of our techniques that the panel mentioned was journaling, one of the first people who maybe did journaling was a Roman Emperor by the name of Marcus Aurelius, and he wrote in his journal that the art of living is more like rustling than dancing, in that it stands ready for what comes and is not thrown by the unforeseen. Basically, sort of I take that to mean what you can, each can take a different meaning, is basically understanding, is basically understanding of just be ready to sort of back against sort of, they may not always
Thank you so much, Matthew. And thank you for all the resources you shared today, by the way. They were like hella good, and I'm gonna go check them out. Megan, would you like to continue so we can keep wrapping up our beautiful panel?
Yay, I'm so happy. Like, I kind of came into this panel because, like, I help organize, so I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna join it. And somehow this turned into like some huge like reflecting thing for me. Like, I wrote a bunch of things down, like from the little activity we just did. Haven't touched this notebook in a few months, probably had dust on it, and I picked it up today. So, you know, that's getting somewhere. And I really, really hope that everyone who's watching this, like, takes what they learned today and actually do something with it, because we didn't, well, it's fun, but we didn't just do this to have fun, right? We did this so you can get things out of it. So I really hope you guys start showing up for yourself, because you're all amazing and I love you. But yeah, communication is key, but understanding oneself is essential to being physically and mentally healthy. Having discussions like these can help alleviate your stress and help you realize that you are not alone. We are thankful to have been able to provide a safe space today for these discussions and to hear all of your questions and thoughts and experiences. We hope that you have learned to, or at least will consider looking at yourself in a more positive way and realize that every win is a win, no matter the size, and recognize that self-care should be prioritized. I picked up my notebook today, and that is a huge win.
I'm so proud of you, Megan. All right, everyone. Now, you deserve to be happy and satisfied with yourself. Just remember that, right? There is an abundance of people who benefit from the self-doubt of people like us. It is during this time that we must remain upstanding and determined to not let our doubts acquire our judgment and instead indulge in self-love, right? We love all of you. You guys love us. We all love each other. Yes. And yeah, and we're doing this to become the best versions of ourselves for ourselves. You're not doing it for anyone. You're doing it for yourself. So I am going to do a quick little poll right now. And it's just basically going to ask, how do you feel? Just tell us, how do you feel? And if you have a different answer than what is currently in the poll options, you can tell us in the chat.
And I'd also love to just add to what Aishwarya said at the end there, that this is for you. We did this event near Valentine's Day because I think a lot of people think of Valentine's Day as them missing another half. But remember, you are whole. You have always been whole. And that's another great affirmation, by the way, is that you are whole. You do not need a partner to feel whole or do things for yourself with. So yes, sorry, go ahead, Aishwarya. It was just a very good point.
No, that's amazing. Gabby, you are popping off today. Amazing with the affirmations. So yeah, just a reminder, you can find us, Fridays for Future Toronto, on Instagram. Our tech people are going to just put it in the chat right there, and you can email us, and you can literally find all of the panelist information in the email we will be sending you after the panel. And remember, we're going to be sending you a Spotify playlist too, so it's going to be amazing. So remember, loving yourself is an act of resistance. Thank you so much to everyone who's here today. You all are amazing. Go take care of yourself. Go take care of yourself. I want all of you to get off this call, go to your mirror like right now, and tell yourself that I appreciate what my body does for me. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. You look amazing. You are fab. I love you. Okay, so yes, thank you so much for coming, and we hope to see you soon one day.
Thank you, everyone. We love you.